those who added most recently, I wanted to again welcome Governor Bush to joining us tonight. Before we get too deep into this, I wanted to once again, Governor, to just share my condolences from Betsy and I about the loss of your parents in the last, you've had a rough couple of years. And I know that they meant a lot to a lot of people. And so again, thank you for joining us. Governor Bush was if I get this right, you were the first two-term governor in Florida. Is that correct?
First two-term Republican governor.
Two-term Republican governor. Okay.
And before me.
Yeah, many of you might remember him also from his run for the presidency in 2016. And you all students have heard about the journey that my wife and I were on around the country, and we became friends with a mutual friend of Governor Bush's, Sally Bradshaw, in Tallahassee, and Sally had worked for the governor for a long time. And we're close, and so she was instrumental in getting us connected. And I still have to say, and I don't know if I've told you this or not, but it was it still ranks as one of our favorite conversations on our trip around the country, because
top 5, top 10, top 50, top 100.
Oh no, easily top 3 or 4. For sure.
Thank you.
And that includes, 700, I think, was our total number. And I probably talk about our conversation more than any of them, because I think what was, just in general, it was a good conversation, but what was really remarkable to me and stands out are just some of the stories that you told, but also like after we left and you called us and got us set up with Bob Graham, former governor and senator, Democratic governor and senator from Florida, who, by the way, was delightful. We had a great visit with him, and then also set us up to have a meeting with your former rival, Governor John Kasich from Ohio. And it just meant a lot to us, the investment that you had in what we were working on. And it was really a special time for us. We really appreciated it. So this is a class on communication ethics, and these students are, for the most part, getting their master's in communication or some form of nonprofit leadership. So they're generally going to be going out into the world in some sort of leadership position. And so here we are in very interesting times, for sure, where ethics, I think, is kind of a question that we should all be thinking about and talking about. So I wondered if you just had any general things to say to start off with, just about how the role of ethics in your life, like how you sort of process your ethical decision making, and then if you have any specific stories that come to mind.
Well, first of all, I would say kudos for the book. I really think it's important. I hope millions of people read it. I'm not certain that millions will, but we're in this really perilous time right now. I'll tell you a pre-story. In my business, we do these calls where we allow investors and potential investors to hear thought leaders. And I had Jay Johnson, who was the former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security under President Obama, and Mike Chertoff, the last Homeland Security Secretary under my brother, talk about election, the sanctity of elections, and the question of cybersecurity, fake news, influenced by foreign sources, the scenarios will happen after an election where, like a week ago, Hillary Clinton said that Joe Biden should never concede, and President Trump almost every day is saying that if he loses, it's because there's some nefarious deal, and there's all sorts of, in this new world we're living in, all this new information that is all bogus, that is scaring people, and many people are believing it. So ethics really matters. I mean, it's like we're at a point where you have to know what's right and wrong, and you can't just like say, if my tribe is advocating this, I'm going to, advance it passionately, and if the other tribe is advancing something different, they're wrong. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's truth. There's truth, and the ethical dilemmas that we now face in public life, private life, are becoming like really important. So the course, I would say, is important, and my advice to you is not to put your biases first and try to figure out what's right and wrong, And so I spend some time on this. I used to have a speaking.
Ooh.
Sorry, Alex.
No.
That's good. I had a speaking business. It's died temporarily and probably dead for a while with the coronavirus. Mm-hmm. And I spent a lot of time talking about Jeb's rules. And the rules were, if you believe that someone that says something vulgar, racist, horrible, wrong is wrong, then call it out, even if it's in your own party. Mm-hmm. Because I know your head's going to explode if it's in the other party. It's like, it's almost immediate when someone says something really stupid on the left, the right will go crazy, or someone says something idiotic on the right, and the left goes crazy. But it's very seldom do you find someone that ethically should be challenged that isn't. And so the first rule of Jeb's rule is to call it out. Call it out when Steve King says that a migrant crossing the border who's pregnant is really a drug dealer that's carrying drugs, or on the left, where a newly arrived congressman from Michigan says, we're going to impeach the MF in front of a crowd in Washington, D.C., a bunch amongst the lobbyists, without knowing anything, have no facts, just to garner the cheers of a progressive group. So that's the first one. Second would be, if you're a liberal, watch Fox, read Wall Street Journal. Mm-hmm. If you're a conservative, try to read the New York Times editorial page and go through an entire hour of Rachel Maddow. Mm-hmm. I think what you'll find is they will validate your views, but you'll probably figure out they're not like the enemy. They just might be wrong, which is okay. I mean, it's okay to not agree with people, but you can't assume that everybody that disagrees with you is the enemy. Ethically, that is a huge, huge problem.
Yeah,
it's like totally righteous about everything, and it's a real problem.
Right.
One more thing I'd say is, if you have a chance to opine, try to do it positively rather than negatively. Mm-hmm. Try to, our ethical background isn't to tear people, push people down to make yourself look better or your cause look better. It's to persuade. And so try a little bit harder to persuade rather than to say the other guy's a nincompoop, idiot, horrible person. Persuade people. We've lost our ethical foundation in our country, and the danger is this election may actually turn out, if it's close, could turn out to be something that erodes our democracy. And so I'm kind of worried about this, and I appreciate the fact that, I'm speaking in front of a smaller crowd here, but I try to do this because I think it's really important that we all have a role to play to make this better.
What you were saying about the other news sources really resonates with me, because even if you just really can't stand to hear the message of the other side, it's at least important to know what they're talking about, because that's what's remarkable to me. It's not just the way we're processing the different perspective, it's that we're talking about completely different subjects. Like if you go on CNN webpage and then go to Fox News webpage, they're not even talking about, it's not even the same list of news stories, right? So it's not just about the difference of coverage. It's like the whole agenda is different. And so it's
Yeah, so
sometimes.
let me ask a question to the students. How many of you have seen the shooting of the deputy sheriffs in Los Angeles? Honestly, that's good. That's half. That's better than I thought it would be, because it's atrocious.
Mhm.
It's outrageous. It breaks my heart. And then how many of you know that there were people protesting and stopping the entrance, and legitimate, it's not fake news, legitimately trying to stop the entrance of these cops to go to the emergency room.
Mm.
So half America doesn't know that happened, and half America is seeing it in hyper, like steroid kind of
Right.
environments. And it just creates, everything we see that's that dramatic keeps pushing us away. There's not a common sort of news. There's not a common place where we can get our news, and it just validates our own beliefs. And our ethical challenge is to say, no, all of us, this is a cultural challenge. This is not a political challenge. We have to say there's right and wrong.
Mm-hmm.
There's a place where we have to stand up and say, no, I'm a liberal, but I don't believe that you should kill a police officer. Or I'm a conservative, and I don't think that it's appropriate to put your knee on a guy for 9 minutes, or whatever it was. We've lost our commonality, and ethically, the challenge is, when do we rise up and say, enough of this shit? Excuse me, my language. Enough. When do we start finding common ground again? Because no one could honestly, openly say that it's appropriate what happened to George Floyd. And no one can honestly, openly say it's appropriate to protest, to block 2 law enforcement officers, one a woman, one a man, that are trying to get to a hospital to be able to be saved.
Right. No, I think you're absolutely right.
Everybody agrees with it, but yet we fight the fight in this political realm. We've gone nuts.
Mm-hmm. So I'm interested in, for you, over the last 4 years or so, would you say that, or I guess maybe the better question is, how have the last 4 years changed you in your perspective?
They haven't. That's kind of weird. I ran for president as a conservative, believing that we needed to fix a few really big things because we were on the wrong track. And my frustration and my failure was that no one wanted to listen to me about it. And then I saw the avalanche of this new political environment kind of become the norm. So I watch a lot of ESPN, to be honest with you. I mean, there's a functional obsolescence about my view about things, because I was governor of a pretty important state for 8 years, and we did a lot of big things, and I screwed up a lot of times, but we were doing stuff. We weren't making a point. We were actually acting on creating a strategy, acting on it, trying to draw people towards the idea rather than pushing people away. And the new political environment is really dangerous for our country. So I'm disturbed by it, but I don't feel like my natural instincts continue to be the same, which is, so I'll give you an example. If I believe that private school choice is the right thing to do, which I did, I continue to work on that in the Foundation for Excellence in Education. When I was governor, we created the first statewide voucher program in the country, and the first instinct was find someone who didn't look like me and didn't agree with me on anything else, but thought that low-income parents ought to have a right to choose where their children go, including a private option. And I found one. I found many, and it was helpful to make it happen. And there was a lot of pushback, and it wasn't easy, but the instinct was find common ground first, and then have people share in the credit, have their back, make sure the pressure isn't going to be overwhelming, and make it work. Now it's the opposite. Now you find an issue that is a wedge issue that pushes people away and makes it harder to solve problems. So I ran for president thinking that the old way was the right way, and I still think it is. I haven't changed. But the new way is to not do anything, but just make everybody that doesn't agree with you the demon. Mm-hmm. And it's on both sides, man. I mean, it's a serious problem. I'm not sure that's ethics. That's more politics, but it's a big deal. That's why you wrote your book, I hope. And it's why I hope that we ultimately get to a place where we say, this is not working. I mean, this is exhausting. It's empty calories. We're not, we're not doing anything good, and we're doing a lot of things bad. So I'm still optimistic about our future, because I think there'll be a catalyst to change, go back to a different way of solving problems.
When we talked to you last, you were calling your rules the rules to reweave the web of civility.
Yeah.
So are you still working on that? Have you expanded that list, or?
Well, I think, I'd say the one thing that I think we're missing in our country is a sense, and I think we talked about this, a sense of shared identity. Mm-hmm. Look, our country is, I've been looking out here, you guys aren't as diverse as America.
Right.
But, you're pretty diverse. It's, central, it's middle America. Right. It's Missouri, it's maybe different. But in most younger people, if you look at them, are majority minority. The leadership that's emerging in our country is really excitingly diverse, and that is phenomenal. If we have a sense of shared purpose, a sense of shared identity, a sense of understanding our culture, our history, and the benefits of being an American, and the responsibilities of being American, and all that is eroded. It's not Trump that has done this. This is pre-Trump and maybe accelerated by the president with his approach. But we become tribal. And by the way, it's not Trump. It's Biden. It's Trump. It's all the politicians that are playing this game, preying on breaking ourselves up rather than saying, look, our strength is our diversity. But in order for that to be successful, there has to be a sense of shared identity. So I would add that, to the sense of civics education might be important, warts and all. We're at a point where the left says our success is a fraud. And I would argue that we're the greatest country on the face of the earth. And it started with a constitution that was unique in the world, and to this day is the greatest blueprint for how to act. It's not the document itself is phenomenal, and it was based on consensus and compromise, by the way. The execution on that document has not been perfect, and we should admit that and say we should strive to be better. But now we're rejecting the initial nature of our country and the greatness of our country. I think we do that at our peril. So we're in this very perilous place where the right is saying, the harder right, which is becoming more dominant, is saying is not respecting diversity, and the harder left is saying that it's a fraud, that the American experiment is a fraud. And there's a whole bunch of people in the middle that are like trying to make ends meet and striving to do better for their families and worried about a bunch of stuff, that are like looking at both of these groups and going, holy crap. I mean, we're in a heap of trouble. I don't know what to do. And which is why I think finding ways that we can forge consensus, probably at the local level first, which is what hopefully your book will talk about, how you build consensus at the local level between people that don't agree, and ultimately get to a place where the national consensus is, we got to do better. We got to go back to a place where we don't think people that disagree with us are the enemy.
Right.
you know, it's just kind of where I think.
I want to hold to my promise of not making you stick
We have
around.
a couple of questions from your
Yeah,
students.
I was going to say, let's have the students, if everybody could just unmute so that we're not, when we ask questions of the governor, that way everybody can just jump in and ask a question that's on your mind.
Hey, Katie, did you have your daughter there that came to check in with you once in a while?
Yeah, my daughter was in here.
How's she doing?
She's good. She's in preschool and she's really enjoying it.
Is she going to school?
Yeah.
Cool. In Florida, we don't have preschool. Or South Florida. I'm sorry, South Florida.
It's technically transitional kindergarten, so it's between preschool and kindergarten. So she goes full time. She's not ready for kindergarten yet, but she is 5.
Okay.
Wow.
Well, tell her I said hello.
I will. I think she ran off. No, but my husband's over here watching. He was excited that you were on here.
And tell your husband he can throw a question in too if he wants to.
Okay.
Anybody? So I know several of you got questions prepared, so don't be shy. Jump in there.
Well,
Ace, go ahead. I saw your Hollywood Square light up. So.
Oh, I was just about to ask, is it selfish to ask 2? Because I had 2, but I can.
Well, let's start with one and then let somebody else get one more in.
Cool. I guess so. During your time as governor, is there any sort of example you could provide, or like what's the most one of the most difficult choices you've had to make as governor?
Yeah. Well, I had a lot of them. I think the most difficult decision or process I had to be involved in was the death penalty. I'm a Catholic. I try to be a devout one. I wander off and on the path, like many Catholics do. But every year, before the Red Mass, which is when the Red Hats, I guess, show up in Tallahassee to talk about the Catholic faith, they were generally supportive of my efforts because I acted on my belief. But they were at the very end, they would kindly lecture me about my beliefs about the death penalty, and it had an impact on me because who am I to be able to make that decision? It's a difficult decision. It was tempered by the fact that I met families who lost a loved one from a brutal attack. I mean, it was not, talking about an ethical challenge, that is about as big as you can get. So my core beliefs are that life is precious from beginning of life to end. And at the same time, the state law requires that when someone commits an atrocious crime, that they should be given the death penalty. What I learned over this experience was that it wasn't a deterrent. Probably because of all the legal machinations that went on. But it troubled me every time I had to, was obligated to, I guess I wasn't obligated to sign a death warrant, but I wanted to adhere to the rule of law. The law required me to do it. I guess I could have said no. That night, where I was actively involved in not just the signing of a death warrant, but participating in the process of killing another human being, for whatever reason, was deeply troubling to me. It impacted me. I can't tell you. My wife could probably explain it to you more than me. It was horrible because it was such a hard decision. So that was probably number one. But there were many others. I mean, you're in public life, you have these consequences you don't expect, and you're left with your moral beliefs, your moral architecture, and you have to, at least I tried to do what I thought was right morally based on my own beliefs rather than what was politically correct. Terry Schiavo would be an example of that. So this was a woman who was, according to a judge, was brain dead, whose husband won a malpractice award to be able to take care of Terry through the end of her life, and received, like $800,000 or something like that in a malpractice award, and then decided halfway through this journey that he had found a significant other, which, you know, I understand that totally, but decided that her life was no longer valued. And so we went through this ordeal where her parents believed that her life was valued and they were prepared to take care of her. A judge ruled against that and went through this process of we need to allow her to die because her husband doesn't want her to live, even though he agreed in a civil case to do it. So this is the way the world works. The world doesn't work like yes and no, it's all simple or not. You have ethical challenges. And so the ethical challenge to me, as someone that believes that life is sacred and precious, is I think we should protect this life, particularly if a mom and dad and a family wants to take care of them with their heart and soul. And we went through a journey that became national, international. It was, I won't explain all the things that happened to my family, but certainly to what happened to their family, more importantly. And she was starved to death. And it took 10 days. And I had a Mayo, there was a Mayo Clinic doctor that neurologically believed that there was life there, and he professionally said this. None of that was listened to. And so I had to watch for 10 days while a precious life died. Now, you could disagree with my moral architecture on that, but ethically, I did everything I could up to the point, and this is the point I want to make to you, up to the point where I didn't take the law in my own hands, which is important. So I acted on my faith. I acted on the rule of law. I advanced my cause with really good lawyers in my office, who are now my personal lawyer is the person that advanced this. And we reached the point where the courts said otherwise, and I had to pull back. And I think that's important. I think the important thing is your ethical beliefs have to be converged with the institutions that we have in our society that makes our society work. And it was painful. It was incredibly painful for me, but it was more than appropriate to do what I did.
Was there somebody else that spoke up there earlier? I'd like to try to get one more question in before we let the governor go.
I did.
Jill?
My question is on a national level, with so many people on both sides of the aisle unwilling to hear other perspectives, and it seems to be getting worse by the day. Do you have any suggestions on how we can help fix that? Because we're sitting here in Springfield, Missouri, and we're all shaking our heads. Like, it doesn't matter what side you're on. It's why can't we all just try to work something out?
I think the broader suggestion would be we've become a vertical country. I use the example of, like, if you're a gardener, you could go on Facebook or one of these others. I don't do all the social media stuff other than Twitter, just to opine and give my views. So I don't know how Facebook works or LinkedIn or whatever, but whatever your passions are, you can, like, connect with everybody in the world that believes in gardening or believes in communism or believes in libertarianism or whatever. I mean, you can live in that little ecosystem and never leave. That is really dangerous because the erosion of civility happens kind of in an incipient way, because there's a lot of research that suggests that, you know, if you're anti-gardening and you opine amongst a bunch of people that believe in gardening, I'm using this as an allegory, you're going to get your ass kicked. I mean, it's going to be uglier than you can believe. And all the anti-gardeners are going to come to your defense, and they're going to say all the people that believe in gardening are just full of shit. And then they're going to fight. And then they're going to organize in ways that create this conflict of pushing people apart all the time. So the vertical nature of our society today, because of digital media, is really dangerous. So how do we get back to a horizontal world where you're a Rotarian and you're kind of obliged by the Rotarian principles to have different views? You got a banker, accountant, a salesman, a air conditioning repairman. I mean, it's how do we get back to the place where you have a bunch of people that have different identities that have a common purpose? That has to happen from the bottom up. That will not happen from a decree from DC. DC is the poison. Washington politics is the danger. So what I would suggest is that none of this stuff happens linearly. Our culture, our society, our social, the social stuff and economy is not driven by a top-down way. And the culture will change when we decide it's going to change. And so breaking those bonds to get back to, look, here's the deal. If, Jill, if you and I disagree, and maybe this would be better if we didn't see each other. But if we disagree and we don't know each other, it only makes it worse. But if I know you and I know your kids and I know your family, and you go to a church or you go to a social organization and we share, we break bread together and we understand each other, or even if we don't, if we just know each other, we're not going to fight like we fight on the internet, right? And I think that's the first point, is to reject this whole crazy idea that people that disagree with us are the enemy, and get back to humanity, get back to a bottom-up approach to, which is our greatness as a country historically. I'm ranting here, so let me give you one more example, because this is really what bothers me beyond belief. I'm a headbanging conservative. I believe in freedom, liberty, self-government. I acted on it as governor. I cut taxes like every time I could. I did all this stuff. And so don't get me wrong. I'm not a squish. I'm significantly more conservative than Donald Trump. I can promise you that. But so I see this stuff going on, and I'm thinking it dawned on me at one point that our culture has changed, not our politics. And our politics is a reflection of our culture. So what are the times in American history where we've had big cultural shifts? That's the issue. The thing we should study is, what are the catalysts to change how we interact with one another? It's more difficult now because of the internet, for sure. And I got 330 million people. But so I read a book, I can't remember the name of it, but related to the Second Great Awakening in America. Brad, I don't know if you read it.
You told me.
Shopkeepers. I think I told you about it.
Yeah.
Shopkeepers, something or other. You didn't read it. I didn't convince you. So this is a book that was about the Second Great Awakening. This was a time, 1830s, 1820s, where men moved away from their families out west to seek their fame and fortune. Out west was Ohio. The Erie Canal was being built, and there was debauchery. Alcoholism rates were like 10x more than they are today, 13x. I mean, it's like 20x. It was like incredible. Divorce rates grew. The country, for the first time since the founding of the Republic, was in serious trouble. And it wasn't a politician that said, okay, we're going to have a 5-point plan to solve this. It was a group of Presbyterian ministers in Western New York on fire for we're evangelists basically for the Lord, that tried to convince people there was a better way. And it created a massive revolution that restored a sense of purpose, common identity. It wasn't perfect, I'm sure, but it went back together again. And it was the seed of the abolitionist movement, for sure, the women's suffrage movement for sure, the prohibitionist movement, believe it or not, and the progressive movement of the early 20th century. All of this was sparked by a cultural change. And so what I'm asking you guys, I'm going to get off after this, is I don't know what your views are on politics. I don't really care. Do you love your country? And if you do, then maybe the objective ought to be not to be focused on the 5-point plan of Biden or Trump. It might be, how do we create a cultural change that harnesses all the benefits that we've lived in now with technology and all these things, that creates the next spurt of the American experiment? I think it's culture. It's not politics that you should guys be focused on. And it should be driven by what's right and wrong, and you know, the things that we always hopefully believe in. And if you can communicate that, then maybe you're the next Presbyterian minister from Western New York. God bless you for doing it.
Well, thank you so much, Governor, for taking
Katie,
time.
who's that? Who's that beautiful girl?
Oh, there she is.
Harper. There's Harper. Say hi.
Hey, Harper.
Hi.
Well, I hope your family is doing well, and hopefully we'll be able to swing down to Florida again sometime and drop by and say hi.
Yeah, the good news for me is I've got my 5th grandchild, Samantha, which is my son and beautiful daughter-in-law's 3rd granddaughter.
Wow.
And he's going to set up a GoFundMe site for his wedding. So anybody wants to contribute, we'd be happy to.
Well, my first grandchild is due in about a week, so
Good for you.
I get to start that experience. So,
Good luck, guys.
all right, thank you, sir.
Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.